All right, it is August 23rd, 2023. The New York Times Daily Newsletter by German Lopez today. We're covering the geography of global warming. I thought it was global boiling, the first Republican debate, and grave talk, more Chinese spyware. Cool. All right, extreme weather. Thought it was climate. Now, remember, it used to be in the aughts, every time there was a weather event, they said, weather is not climate. Now, every time there's a weather event, they say it's climate change. It's whatever they can do to get control. This year's heat can seem relentless. You mean every year. That's literally every year. That's what summer is. And it appears to be only the beginning of a lifetime of hotter summers. Nope. That's just fear porn. It was hotter in the 1930s. It's even hot in the oceans. Yep, that happens in summertime. And then there are wildfires, droughts, and floods, also common events that always happen, which have recently hit the seeming paradises of Hawaii and California. Because of poor management of resources, has nothing to do with climate change or any other process. It's incompetence by government leaders. And in the case of Hawaii, it appears to be real incompetence, like bordering on malevolence. Okay, so the weather extremes are enough to drive some people to pick up their lives and look for more climate-friendly places to live. That's just a made-up term. Jesse Keenan, a climate adaptation expert at Tulane University. What? A climate adaptation expert. What a job title. Living in low-lying New Orleans is among them. Another Katrina is going to happen. Yeah, hurricanes always happen. Referring to the hurricane that struck the city in 2005, I tell my students this: within your lifetime, Tulane will no longer be a university. Your alma mater will relocate or disappear because of where it is. No, that's not true. You see, we have this ability to adapt to the environment. We build these things called levees. It's not an issue at all. Are there places that are better suited to deal with climate change? You mean global boiling? Yes, experts say. The Midwest, inland Northeast, and Northern Great Plains are three examples in the U.S. and parts of Canada, Russia, and Scandinavia could offer refuge internationally. These regions are not immune to climate problems. It's called global warming for a reason. Yeah, it's made up. That's why. But they are expected to see less of the extreme weather that a hotter planet will bring. Why? According to you, it's affecting us now. So there's a contradiction in your own terms. By the way, the reason why it's hotter now is because last year an underwater volcano exploded, sending 40 trillion tons of water into the atmosphere. Water makes things hotter. Humidity makes things hotter. They don't mention that at all, and that's because it would throw a monkey wrench into their plans. Still, Americans are not moving to climate-friendly places today. America is a climate-friendly place. Yeah, they are. If anything, many more have moved away. One of the fastest growing U.S. cities is Phoenix, which has suffered temperatures above 100 degrees for much of this summer. Yeah, that is what happens in the desert. It gets hot. That trend could start to change as people endure more disasters, or you just make them up. Moving to safety. Yeah, you mean like Martha's Vineyard where Obama lives, where it's supposed to be underwater? Yeah, Al Gore has 10 mansions. They don't believe this crap. Leonardo DiCaprio has dozens of beachfront properties and flies private jets. None of them believe this. It's just to take away your rights. How do you know whether a location is better suited for dealing with climate change than the place you live now? Well, if Obama lives there, it's going to do just fine, like Martha's Vineyard. The first is geography. Consider the Midwest. It is inland, away from the rising, hotter oceans and the seas that will cause more floods and more intense hurricanes. Midwestern states are farther north than many others, with naturally lower temperatures. It's 118 degrees in Kansas today. The Great Lakes and surrounding rivers provide reliable sources of water, preventing some of the worst effects of drought. These factors also apply to much of the Northeast U.S. and Northern Great Plains. Except then you always say it's a drought there. You just make things up. Second factor is the ability to take in newcomers, climate refugees. Or not. Does the area have enough affordable housing? Nowhere does, because of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Are residents welcoming to outsiders? Are local and state governments preparing for population increases? If the answer to at least some of these questions is yes, you may have found yourself a potential destination. And just go to Martha's Vineyard, where Obama's at. Some cities meet these standards. Detroit. Detroit, a city built for millions that has like 300,000 people in there, where parts of it are being reclaimed by wilderness, where like wild dogs hunt in packs, and if you go to the wrong block, you're getting shot. Detroit. Biggest failure in American history is Detroit. Cincinnati and Buffalo, New York are common examples. They are in regions with more climate-friendly geography, and they have one thing in common: their populations have shrunk by hundreds of thousands since the 1950s. No, millions. And it's because of horrible democratic policy, leaving them with both the desire to bring back people and many empty buildings that could be turned into housing. Great. Similarly, much of inland New England and northern Great Plains have climate-friendly geography. How? New England is supposed to be underwater, and plenty of space for people to move into. Montana has been called the anti-California for its recent efforts to build more housing. Montana is a giant, sparsely populated state. Like 700 miles of nothing. As an added benefit, these regions also offer stunning vistas and many forms of outdoor recreation. Wow. Better, not perfect. Experts emphasize that no place is invulnerable to climate change. Well, of course not. Global boiling is going to come everywhere. Where's the acid rain, guys? You told me when I was a kid it was going to be acid rain, and every day we'd have to worry and check the acid rain levels. You liars. Vermont is a potential climate haven because of its geography and desire to attract more people. But last month, record floods hit the state. Climate change! Researchers linked them to climate change. Of course, everything is linked to climate change. It's global boiling. That disaster highlights an important point. Better is not perfect. Climate change has an impact everywhere, even if residents can take steps to mitigate the damage. That's the first time they've ever mentioned that we can mitigate damage from global boiling. Many people also can't or won't leave their homes, some particularly in the poor global south, simply can't afford to move to avoid potential disasters, and wealthier places are not always ready for extreme weather. Hawaii's fires this month offer an example. A lack of preparedness and human errors, including possible mistakes by the largest power utility, likely made that situation worse. No. Them not letting water be released and not using sirens and letting people die. That was the big problem. The state's utility has an issue, but the human errors would be the government incompetence, which borders on malevolence. The bottom line, the planet will continue warming in the coming decades. Of course it will, because we started keeping track of temperatures in the late 1800s during what scientists now call a mini ice age. Yeah, it's going to continue to get warmer. During the medieval time periods, they grew grapes in the North Netherlands because it was so warm. It was called the medieval maximum. We're fine. Let's see. Those rising temperatures will bring more extreme weather and more disasters. More people die of cold than of heat. So even if there is no winter, that would be a good thing. Fewer people would still die. So you're lying. People will have to find ways to deal with those problems. In some cases, doing so may be as straightforward as installing air conditioning in more homes, but some might feel compelled to take more extreme steps, including leaving those homes behind. Related, 20 years from now, a summer like this is going to feel like a mild summer, one expert told my colleagues. Yeah, that's what they told me when I was a kid, too. When I was a kid in the 90s, you told me that by now there would be no winter whatsoever, that outside during the summertime we wouldn't even be able to go outside. Oh, and don't forget the acid rain. Turns out all of those were lies. Al Gore said there'd be no polar ice caps by 2013. That was a lie. We have record amounts of ice. Now they're doing a thing where they say, well, there's less 5-year ice than there used to be in the poles. None of that matters. None of that matters whatsoever. It can't possibly ever get to a point where there are no poles. I want you to understand something. For all of you lefties, if you think that it's going to ever warm up at the poles, just understand that each one of them spends about half the year completely in darkness, and that cold air is more dense than warm air, and cold air will always go to the poles. It's not possible that the poles will ever thaw. That's why Antarctica has been a desert of ice where there's no rain and no nothing on parts of it for billions of years, because it literally can't ever warm up there. It's not possible. More on climate. Maui's wildfires spread after firefighters left a brush fire. They said they had what? Maui's wildfires spread after firefighters left a brush fire they said they had contained. So in other words, it wasn't contained and then it got worse. So more along the lines of incompetence or malevolence. Among the more than 1,000 people still missing, grandparents, immigrant hotel workers, and residents of homeless encampments, and lots of kids. And they won't tell us how many bodies that have been recovered are kids. This is a real big problem. Greek firefighters are tackling a wildfire near the Turkish border, recovered the bodies of 18 people, believed to be migrants trying to reach the EU. Tropical storm Harold made landfall south of Houston, pummeling Texas with heavy rains. It has now been downgraded to a tropical depression. That's good news. Tropical storm Franklin is expected to cause flooding in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Parts of the Midwest are enduring a heat wave. That's what happens during the summer. A 1-year-old girl died after she was left in a daycare center's van as temperatures outside reached 98. That's awful. It's terrible that people still have that happen. It's getting better. We don't see those stories quite as much as we used to, but man, how do you forget your child in a car? Gen Z is using lawsuits and TikTok videos to push for lower emissions. Emissions are already lower. That's a dumb thing. You just proving that no matter what, you just want more power. It's always more power. The answer from every single problem that a leftist complains about is give the government more power. Let's see, Smoky Lakes, charred forests, climate change threatens the places where we once sought refuge. More BS and lies. The latest news, Republican debate. 8 Republican candidates meet tonight for the first debate of the 2024 presidential race. Nobody cares. The only one that matters is Vivek. And this is the way it's going to be. It's going to be Trump and Vivek. Ron DeSantis is done. There is no chance for DeSantis to come back. Nobody cares about the rest of the candidates. It's Trump, Vivek, 24. Republican candidates have already spent tens of millions of dollars on ads that no one cares about. For now, these candidates are vying to be second behind Donald Trump, who's snubbing the debate, but one could yet secure the nomination if legal problems derail Trump's campaign. It's doubtful. Why are the longest shots running? To become better known or to win a potentially valuable gigs later on. That's right. It's just about jockeying to try and get fair favor in the next administration. Some of Trump's co-defendants in the Georgia election inquiry turned themselves in. Others are looking to move their case to federal court or have them dismissed. You mean lawyers? Trump's lawyers have turned themselves in, which is absolutely absurd that we're now using the DOJ to go after people's lawyers for giving them legal advice. Should send a chill down everyone's spine. But because it's the Orange Man, you're all right with destroying everything. Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, spoke to federal prosecutors but resisted questions that could hurt his career. In the document case, a former Trump employee dismissed his lawyer, whose fees were paid by a PAC tied to Trump, then changed his grand jury testimony. Though Trump complains about Hunter Biden's overseas deal-making, he and his family received much more money from around the world. So, again, deflection here. So, all of the Trump kids were investigated heavily by Pelosi and they found nothing. Whereas with Hunter, we found proof of crimes and no one wants to talk about that. You just want to keep going, what about Trump? What about Trump? And then whenever you bring up legitimate crimes by Hunter or Hillary or Bill or any of the other Democrats, you scream whataboutism. It's so pathetic. War in Ukraine. American officials say Ukraine's counteroffensive is struggling because it has spread troops across a wide front instead of focusing them. Notice that's changing. First, they say it's going well. Now it's struggling, and then it's going well, and then it's struggling. S-16s are going to change the front. No, they're not. At a summit, Vladimir Putin tried to rally the leaders of Brazil, India, China, and South Africa to his side in the war. He didn't try. He did, and they are supporting him. We're not as widely supported as you claim. Russia recruits soldiers with appeal to manliness and a promise of good pay. Rescuers pulled 8 people from a broken cable car dangling hundreds of feet above a valley in Pakistan. Several passengers were students. Boy, that would have been harrowing. Brazilian authorities are investigating whether Javier Bolsonaro, how do you pronounce his name? Bolsonaro. The former president illegally sold gifts he received in office, including a diamond Rolex. An Indian lunar lander is expected to reach the moon's surface this morning. It actually did make it. I saw that already. Good job, India. They made it. Pretty cool stuff. Other big stories. An influential expert panel recommended extra options for HIV prevention. Like what? I mean, they have the Prev pill already and all that other stuff. What more do you need? Hollywood studios released details of their latest proposal to the striking writers' union in an apparent attempt to break the labor stalemate. Who cares? The hot labor market has led to rapid pay increases, particularly for low-wage service jobs. That's kind of a misnomer because the labor market's not good. It's actually bad. The pay increases are because they're trying to get people to work. Former Vice journalists started their own technology news publication, 404 Media. That's not going to go anywhere. One lesson of long-distance friendship: it's hard to stay emotionally close without physical closeness. Of course. Mrs. Roper Rom. The landlady from Three's Company's become a cult figure, so what, everybody dresses up as her? I thought she was a rude lady. I thought, like, isn't that like dressing up as Lucy? Like, why would you want to go around and be known as her? Influencers are hoping to inspire a new generation of cemetery enthusiasts. Okay. A WNBA record. So some chick scored 50. Ja Wilson scored 53 points in last night's win, tying the league's all-time single game scoring record, 53 points. Wow. That's why nobody watches. All the world's a stage. Lately, it seems as if grown-up theater kids around the world, politicians, Olympians, tech and entrepreneurs, and even a Supreme Court justice act in their youth, the ability to perform an outsized version of oneself, a trait that once made drama-loving teens an easy punchline, has become a strength, whether on TikTok, in a Zoom meeting, or a presidential debate. I don't think it's like the awesomest personality quality that I have that I want people to pay attention to me, said MSNBC host Chris Hayes, a former theater kid, but we live in a culture that really rewards thirst and propaganda. The Met announced a Harlem Renaissance exhibition for 2024. The museum says it will be in New York's first major survey of the movement in nearly 40 years. Haska, a new Star Wars series on Disney Plus starring Rosario Dawson, capably follows the franchise's formula without breaking ground. Oh God, more Star Wars crap. Who cares? The wedding of Jack Antonoff, a musician and producer, and Margaret Qualley, an actress, brought celebrities like Taylor Swift to New Jersey. Why did I read that? Banana pudding. Well, at least it's food. Okay, so that ended that. Oh, you know what I was going to do? We were going to do something else just for fun. Today in history. All right, on August 23, 2020. Wait. They're doing that? Okay. On August 23, 2020, a white police officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin, shot a black man, Jacob Blake, 7 times as officer tried to arrest Blake on an outstanding warrant. The shooting left Blake partially paralyzed and triggered several nights of violent protest. Blake, who was shot as he was about to get in the SUV with a pocket knife that had fallen from his pants, later said he'd been prepared to surrender after putting the knife in the vehicle. Yeah, he wasn't charged because they ordered Blake not to go after it. The knife was in the vehicle. The mom actually called the police because he had violated a restraining order. So, yeah, that's interesting. I like the framing on that one. Okay, in 1305, Scottish rebel leader Sir William Wallace was executed by the English for treason. Yes, indeed. Freedom! In 1775, Britain's King George III proclaimed the American colonies to be in a state of open and avowed rebellion. Indeed, King George, indeed. In 1914, Japan declared war against Germany in World War I. And then to this day, we still blame Germany for the start of that war, which they had nothing to do with. All they did was merely express support for Serbia. They didn't even actually come out to their aid. In 1927, amid worldwide protest, Italian-born anarchists Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti were executed in Boston. for the murders of two men during a 1920 robbery. On the 50th anniversary of their executions, then Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis issued a proclamation that Zarco and Vanzetti had been unfairly tried and convicted. I remember Dukakis. He was fun. He tried to take the presidency in 1988. 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union agreed to a non-aggression treaty, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in Moscow, which the British also had a treaty with the Germans, and they were going to go and attack the Russians, and then the British betrayed them. That makes it in popular culture references quite often. In 1973, a bank robbery turned hostage-taking began in Stockholm, Sweden. The four hostages ended up empathizing with their captors, a psychological condition now referred to as Stockholm Syndrome. In 2000, a Gulf Air Airbus crashed into the Persian Gulf near Bahrain, killing all 443 people aboard. I do remember that one. That was a big deal. In 2003, former priest John Gagan, the convicted child molester whose prosecution sparked a sex abuse scandal that shook the Roman Catholic Church nationwide, died after another inmate attacked him in a Massachusetts prison. I did not know about that. 2004, President George W. Bush criticized a political commercial accusing Democratic nominee John Kerry of inflating his own Vietnam War record and said broadcast attacks by outside groups had no place in the race for the White House. That would be the start of the swift boating. But the 2004 presidential campaign seems downright tame compared to now. In 2008, Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama introduced his choice of running mate, Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, before a crowd outside the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, which is funny because everybody knew at the time the reason why I picked him was because he was the racist old white man that was to satisfy all the old racist Democrats. In 2011, a magnitude 5.8 earthquake centered near Mineral, Virginia, the strongest on the East Coast since 1944, caused cracks at the Washington Monument and damaged Washington National Cathedral. In 2013, a military jury convicted Major Nadal Hansen in the deadly 2009 shooting rampage at Fort Hood, Texas, that claimed 13 lives. The Army psychiatrist was later sentenced to death. Staff Sergeant Robert Bales, the U.S. soldier who'd massacred 16 Afghan civilians, was sentenced at Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington, to life in prison with no chance of parole. Interesting event with that shooting at Fort Hood. If the soldiers had been allowed to be armed, he might not have gone nearly as far. I guess no celebrity birthdays today. Typically there's celebrity birthdays, but I guess there wasn't anybody good today, huh, guys? That's all right. Well, that will be the end